Well, it is official. Hillary Clinton has the delegates to clinch the Democratic nomination. But Bernie Sanders, he says he is still in it to win it.
There's nothing to concede. Secretary Clinton will not have the requisite number of pledged delegates to win the Democratic nomination. She will be dependent on super delegates. They vote in July 25th.
And the upcoming convention seems to have a lot in common with the 1980 DNC. And here with a history lesson at 5:20 in the morning, Scott Rasmussen, president of Rasmussen Media Group. So great to have you here in the morning.
It's
always.
good to be here.
This is actually, we say history lesson, but this is actually quite fascinating because we talk a lot about these super delegates and why the Democrats have so many. You were at the 1980 convention. You say it all goes back to that.
That's right. In 1980, there was an incumbent president of the United States, Jimmy Carter, running for re-election, and there was a challenge from the left by Ted Kennedy. And Kennedy lost the early rounds but had the momentum. He was winning the states near the end, just like Bernie Sanders. In those days, there were no superdelegates. So Jimmy Carter had a majority of the pledged delegates going into the convention. Kennedy really believed that in their heart of hearts, the delegates wanted him. They were feeling the burn back then for Ted Kennedy. And what did he do? The very first motion made at the Democratic Convention in 1980 was to unbind all the delegates because he was sure, Kennedy was sure they would turn to him. Well, it didn't happen. The rules were held. Jimmy Carter was elected, and it wasn't until then, at the convention, that Kennedy suspended his campaign. A couple of years later, the Democrats said, we can't have this again. We need a system to make sure we never have another outsider like Jimmy Carter nominated, another outsider like George McGovern. So they put in a system of superdelegates. And the irony of it, to me at least, is that it was a challenge from the left by Ted Kennedy that put in those superdelegates. And now, 36 years later, it's hurting a challenge from the left.
So interesting. Here we are, and a lot of people are questioning why we have these superdelegates. Right. So the communications director for the DNC even came out saying it's not really over yet. Let's hear what he had to say.
One of the problems is the way the media reports it. Any night that you have a primary or caucus, the media lumps in superdelegates that they've basically polled because they just call them up and say, who are you supporting? They don't actually vote until the convention, and so they shouldn't be included in any count.
So Sanders is saying he's not dropping out. Is there any possibility that he could still make inroads at the convention?
There's a possibility. Right now, let's look at the situation. Hillary Clinton has a 243-delegate lead among pledged delegates. She has won most of the votes. She has won most of the pledged delegates. The super delegates are padding her lead. What the system is doing, and it works pretty well for Democrats, is it does give them a safety valve if something happens, and it would have to be very, very dramatic. If Hillary Clinton were to lose what they're calling the FBI primary, well, these super delegates could then say, we want a different option. Don't know if it goes to Bernie Sanders then, though.
So interesting. All this talk about a GOP contested convention, and yet here we are with the Democrats.
And they're going to change the rules, and it still won't work.
Scott, thanks so much for being here.